Is unconditional love truly achievable in a marriage or other significant adult relationship? Can I and my partner actually live it consistently on a practical basis? What challenges, what lessons, what revelations might we expect? To answer these questions and more, I'm going to defer to Persia and Grace Garland Moen, two very good friends, and the closest I've come to seeing unconditional love in relationship. Indeed, they may well exemplify it. I first met Persia in Peru in 2007 when we both independently attended an event hosted by Alberto Villoldo's Four Winds shamanic training organization. 10 years later, Persia invited me to join her own group for another trip to Peru. There I met Grace and discovered a strong affinity with them both. More recently, we've reconnected on social media and have enjoyed, certainly from my perspective, quality time and beautiful conversations together on Zoom. Persia and Grace are beautiful souls with, I believe, a lot to offer, which is why I've asked them to join me today. Persia and Grace, thanks so much for being here. So to kick off, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourselves. Tell us maybe a little about how you came together and anything else that you think it valuable for us to know about you in your current circumstances.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you for
That's an incredibly loving intro. It's just filled with so much sweetness. Thank you.
thanks for having this conversation with us. We really are sending a prayer to all of your viewers so that this conversation will be a blessing to them and inspire them to continue on their path and to continue to cultivate love and higher frequencies of love in their own life and relationships. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Grace, and Persia and I have been doing this work together now for many years, and before that, we did individually worked in these different spiritual traditions that we'll talk about in the talk on ourselves so that we could cultivate the capacity in our hearts, the capacity in our spirits to come together in a relationship that continued to grow in love. And that's the journey that we believe every soul is here on the planet to do, which is to grow in their capacity of love. And we're going to talk all about that. And so we've gotten together in our relationship and we've continued that journey. And we also, we don't like to use the word shamanic practice, but we have kind of a spiritual practice that we do to help other people go on that journey and develop more capacity for love. And that's our whole life is committed to that. And I think I'll talk about a little bit about my background and our story in the talk, but I think Persia can say a little bit about herself.
Okay, great.
To introduce myself, I started having an incredible amount of love for the divine, an exalted love from a very early age, and a great deal of communication from a very early age. And it made it clear to me that in order to follow that thread and strengthen my clarity internally, that I needed to find some really wise teachers. And so we have worked with a lot of lineages. When we met, Glenn, I had begun studies with the Paco Andino lineage from the Andes Mountains in Peru, and received a lot of transmissions from some elders who were working for many decades with their own relationship with the light. And it was a perfect launch to more formal teaching. I had a lot of spiritual influences before that. But to have a more in-depth teaching with a path, with a lineage that had scientific methods that were able to help me come back into my own remembrance was very powerful and meant a lot to me. I really believe in working with scientific method and lineages of light. And that lineage is a mystical lineage. And really quickly after working with them, multiple lineages of light started communicating. And we help people in our work very passionately to understand how they can work directly with the internal light to come back into their true nature. And it affects everything, including really beautiful relationships, but it affects your whole perception of yourself and your healing in such an exquisite and empowering, beautiful way. So I've studied that now for almost 3 decades, and more formally with direct initiation with multiple lineages. So not just the Paco Andino lineage that I started with in 2006, but there's quite a few lineages that I've been working with very serious teachers for a long time. So we're inspired to help people who feel a deep commitment to all of that work. So that's the easiest way to give an explanation about what we're doing in terms of how we're walking this path.
We don't normally talk much about our personal relationship, but I think for the talk we're doing with you, Glenn, I think that was something that you felt inspired about hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we'll talk a little bit about that because it is possible through a strong commitment of personal development and what I would say devotion, integrity, sincerity, to cultivate the capacity in yourself to develop beautiful, loving relationships. And what could be more beautiful and loving is to have a partnership where you're with someone on a day-to-day basis every day, where you are experiencing the support and the love to continue your own spiritual growth. So our relationship is really built on that foundation of mutual devotion, sincerity, complete honesty and transparency, and I would say owning, being self-empowered and self-responsible to own everything that's going on in yourself and not project it onto another person. So it's not that we don't have challenges in our life. We do, because pat yourself on the back. You're a human being. You're on the planet. It's very challenging down here. So we have to face those challenges, and we do it with complete inner sovereignty and basically not having any projections of any negative thoughts, feelings, or emotions on the other person. So that's one of the big keys, and that takes a huge commitment to not do that. But once you've gotten to that place where you're able to not let stuff out that's negative, and you're constantly looking at it and making sure that you're not, sharing that with other people, then the relationship itself becomes a support to continue to do your own inner work. Mm. And it's something we are passionate about and we believe in, and we're constantly supporting each other with love, devotion, and support in our own spiritual growth. And so I think that's a very key component of our relationship, and it's very achievable. I think everyone actually is here to achieve that. Mm. It's really just a matter of making a choice. And what inspired me early on in my journey was a lot of the work of Don Miguel Ruiz. Mm. And Don Miguel has a couple very inspiring books, The Mastery of Love, The Four Agreements, and others. And I took those to heart. It wasn't easy in the beginning. I had to reread those books multiple times and listen to them multiple times on audiobook to like have the information sink in to the point where I was able to start practicing it. But if you just practice his four agreements and you have a commitment to love, then things start flowing and moving forward. Not that it's easy to do that stuff, but anyone can do it. And Don Miguel, his quote is when you're ready for love, you choose love. And so when I got to the place in my life after having quite a few failed relationships, I stopped blaming other people for those failures. I started looking at why I was choosing those relationships, and I started implementing his 4 agreements and choosing love. And that got me on the path that eventually attracted someone like Persia into my life, because it really was through the attraction of the energy and the vibration that brings that love into your life.
Beautiful, yeah. Let me ask you this. It's I suppose you might call it a fairly basic question, but how would you both define love based on, first of all, your relationship or personal relationship, or both, if there's a difference, I guess, from your experience, but also in the bigger picture sense. So from how you, and maybe there is or there isn't a difference in the terms of the collective, how would you articulate that?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if there is a difference. Um, uh, for me, experiencing love internally as what existence is, and I can tap into it, is also a reflection of the divine that I see in my husband, Grace. It's a reflection of the relationships I have with all my friends and family. And that divine love is a reflection of what I see in all humanity. So I don't know if I can say there is a difference. Obviously, the ability to have flow and presence with each other is going to be extremely elevated when you're with somebody that's on that same level as you,
Mm,
who has that same commitment and sincerity. And you can have a great love for humanity, but you're not going to have a true friendship with every single individual. You can still love them perfectly as they are,
mm,
but the ability for us to reflect back our personal inner relationship with the divine to each other. I see that divine in Grace every single day. It makes my heart feel like it's exploding with
wow,
joy.
beautiful.
And I see his light. I see his living his own sovereign relationship with the divine light. I see a lot of human beings who don't have that clarity, but I know that's only because they've forgotten what they are. It's not because that's not what they are. Um, and so I feel when I'm actually now at this point, when I walk through the world, I feel like I look at, I don't know if people will think this is good or not, but I look at all humanity and I see innocent children.
Mm,
I see them on the journey back home to their divine nature, no matter where they're at in their journey, and it overwhelms my heart with love in a good way,
mm,
in a
mm,
clarifying, peaceful way, not an overwhelm that's disruptive. So I'm not sure if there's a difference, but the ability to keep being present with what I've been working on in myself has allowed me to be closer to the light because I've let go of what is false inside of me. And that depth of relationship is definitely a reflection on my ability to be present in my partnership. So that's everything to me. I give all credit to the divine,
mm.
um, and not to my individual personality. So,
I think the depth of love and compassion and acceptance that we have for people doesn't come without discernment. I mean,
Mm,
for sure,
we fully see that there are some people
immense
who
struggle.
are, yeah, struggling, and we have immense compassion for them and acceptance for where they're at in their journey. But that doesn't mean we invite them over for dinner and we open our door to them. People that have maybe are working with their anger and frustration, and it's coming out all the time. We'll have compassion, but we also have discernment. We
mm,
can give them a wide berth, and we don't try to interfere or get in the way of what they're working on in this lifetime for themselves. But what we do recognize is that other people who are on the who are raising their frequency and removing complexes and distortions that are attached to their identity, those folks who are receptive in that way can be in a closer relationship with us because that's the path that they're on, and it allows more openness and flow in that sort of sense.
We're not meant to be in relationships that have a constant power struggle and battle, like where somebody's frequency is constantly trying to fight you because they don't feel receptive to doing an inner journey and creating clarity and peace in how they treat other people. Nobody's supposed to sit there and be in that kind of situation. That's not what we're meant to do, but we also don't need to expect someone to change. We can really recognize that the hurt that they have and their forgetting of who they are is coming from, a hurt child, and you can just have so much pure acceptance and love for that person. But you do have to choose who you're going to interact with, and that's okay. It doesn't having that compassion for another person who might be struggling in that way and not wanting to, every teacher we know says, don't bring people like that into your space, turn your back, but you don't turn your heart. You just walk away.
Yeah. That's beautiful. What you've said already is, sort of throwing up all sorts of questions. I think we may have to do more than one interview to cover all the ground here. But let me go back in the past to some extent. Can you tell us a little bit about how you first came to meet? Were you aware of any pre-incarnation agreement, any soul contract? Any karmic element? Did that come later? That's a big question, I know, but I would really love to hear, because I know you have this beautiful story of how you came to be together. And, it was, it was delightful to hear it when you shared some of it with me the other day. So over to you, but the element of the knowing and the coming together and how that sort of evolved in terms of what you were aware of from the past, and also what you were carrying into the relationship, if I can put it that way.
I would say like a starting foundation that we both shared with each other that was going on for us before we met was this like revelation and clarity that we had to humble ourselves and completely surrender to being guided on how to get to this point that we both had a goal to get to. We knew that we didn't know how to get there. We knew that we were carrying things that were blocking us from getting here. We both individually made that choice to just say, I'm going to have a daily dialogue with this infinite light that is within all beings. It's within us. We had already been having that daily dialogue in our spiritual practice for a long time, but when it came to wanting a partnership, we just said, there's stuff that I need to drop, and I'm going to start having an ongoing conversation with the divine light that lives within about what I need to realign and heal inside myself so that that frequency can match. And we both knew we had to do that. We both individually started having that dialogue, and we teach people how to ask the right questions and tap into getting an answer, because there is a specific scientific method to that. And we had a lot of messages coming to us that helped redirect what was out of balance in us. So that was a key foundation, I think, for both of us. There is a specific story that we'll get into that's quite beautiful about how that help showed up.
I think for Persia, she has some really cute things she talks about when she was like 2 years old and was talking about going to Peru and meeting, having her husband, and her childhood friend looked exactly like the way I looked as a child, and she kept telling him, "You look just like my husband."
That's true. He was Norwegian, and
yeah,
he's got Norwegian ancestry.
I was a little blonde kid, looked just like this other kid that she found a picture of and showed me. I was like, I did look like that little kid when I was a kid. So it's cute. There is stuff I think that comes in from.
We know we chose before we got here.
Yeah, there's soul agreements that you make when you come in, in the upper world, and then you come in, and then you got to try to do your best to connect with those agreements and get yourself on the right path. I think for me, after I did a certain amount of work on myself, and I was able to, clean myself up in quite a bit. I decided, and this is interesting because we do mentor quite a few young people, and they're always asking about dating, and I feel like I'm going to get into some dating advice now. But when I learned to stop compromising myself, and I for about a year or so before I met Persia, I was dating, but I started dating with this new framework of not compromising myself and not wasting my time trying to convince people that love was real and that relationship was possible.
This is like a scientific experience.
Yeah, so I was
testing it out.
I would go on a date, and then I would just question people, like, on the first date, do you believe in love? Do you believe in committed relationships? I will put my values out there. Do you have a relationship with the divine? And some people got very uncomfortable, obviously, and the date ended quickly. And that's fine. That's actually what I was trying to do. I was trying to show the divine light that I was seriously committed to this path, and I wasn't going to compromise and get involved with somebody who wasn't
swept up into the moment.
Yeah, who just based on chemistry or attraction, or just being lazy and getting into relationships. I wasn't going to do that anymore. So I had to go through this rigorous dating process where I had to prove over and over and over again that I wasn't going to compromise and get involved in what I knew was trying to convince somebody to love me. I knew that I was love. Our nature is love. So I stuck to that. And when I interviewed people over and over and over again, and I could see that, they weren't on that page. They didn't.
It's like a job interview.
Yeah, they were still considering whether love was real or not, or whether or not they had internal love. I was fine with that. I was like, I'm not trying to convince you that your nature is love. You either know that and are committed to it or not. So when I finally met Persia, it was a really funny story. I created this profile online that everyone told me, oh, don't write all that stuff. It's too crazy. But I was just like, I'm writing down my values, and I'm writing down what I know is true for me. And I put it out there.
Like a vision board.
Yeah. Wow. I put it out there.
You got to be sincere.
And I got a lot of people who were like, that's way too intense. That's way too much. But I got to the point where I got a message somehow. I put a Rumi poem in my profile, and I got a message to search for people who had Rumi in their profile. I don't know why, it just came through. And there was 4 people in the world that had a Rumi poem.
We were living 3,000 miles apart when we met.
And Persia was one of those people that had the Rumi poem. And then when I found her profile, I read it, and I was like, I didn't want to swear, but I was like, holy crap. I was like, this person really means what they say. They're serious. When they talk about loving the earth and the divine light and, all the things that she was talking about, I was like, I could tell that they really meant it, not that they were just writing it to be cool. And so Spirit sent me a message to send her. And I wrote that message. And I remember like literally my thought was, my finger was hovering over the button to say send. And I just remember going, oh crap, if I send this is for real. Things are really going to happen now. Yeah,
this is all
he had a moment of fear.
I was scared because I was like, when what you're looking for finally shows up, I was like, I knew.
It's a little shocking.
I was like, it invoked some fear in me because I was like, I knew that my path was going to change and that
blast off,
and things were actually going to get more serious, more like there was more to, the path is going to go farther. So I hit send, and then she took like 12 days to get back to me. And that 12 days.
There's a reason.
Were you being coy?
No, there's a reason. I got a message, and I'll talk about that.
But once we connected and we started sharing, we developed a friendship. We developed a very good, loving friendship first, just by talking on the phone every day and talking about all these what I would say our values and things that were very serious. And I grilled Persia with serious questions about things.
What was the biggest relief to me in my life?
Wow.
Because I knew that he was serious because of the questions he was asking. It was like a breath of fresh air.
So that's just a short version of it. But yeah, it was the the unwillingness to compromise what I knew was loving and to be connected to my own divine truth, that is what led me on this process.
And I knew he had self-respect because he asked me those questions.
Beautiful.
And a lot of self-transparency.
Yeah,
because and commitment.
If you ask a tough question, you also have to be able to answer that question.
Yeah.
And you got to have a good answer. You got to know.
The best sign, the questions you asked me. It touched my heart, and I knew we were best friends when he asked me those questions and grilled me.
So it's a willingness to ask tough questions and also be transparent when you are having to answer those same questions.
So let me ask you a potentially a tough question.
Right.
Having met and having become, if you like, a couple, if I can call it that, being in a relationship, what did you notice was coming up as the relationship evolved? I mean, for example, were there challenges within the love of the relationship to your individual self-love?
The relationship, so from my teacher, Don Miguel, what I came to understand was that, and what basically my prayer to the divine was, is that I understood that a spiritual relationship was there to help you go farther on your healing journey. So whatever comes up is actually being presented to you as an individual to release more of your complexes, more of your programming. And so when we got involved with each other, I had done a certain level of work. But obviously, when you get into partnership, there's more work to be done, because you get things get revealed to you that you weren't aware of before. And so I would say the first year of our relationship, there was still some family complexes, family habits that were still present in me. And because I was so committed to love and so committed to Persia, and making sure that Persia, the way I treated Persia and the way that we interrelated was always positive and loving, when things came up that weren't, and it's mostly like family programming, that because we were both committed to dealing with everything in a loving, positive, and helpful way, we never took anything personally. Persia was simply able to communicate, oh, there's something going on and I'm feeling some pain about it.
And I don't know what to do. I don't have the answer. Can we do this together?
And then I could take responsibility for that, what I was doing, and go, and I went and worked on it. I didn't just go, oh, that's fine, and brush it under the table. I said, oh yeah, that's not good. I don't want to be doing that.
We had a commitment.
Sorry, just to be clear, was that the case? Was this straight off the bat then? You mentioned the first year, but it seemed to me that you were very conscious from what you're saying, even when you became a partnership.
Yeah.
That
you're right. The foundation.
In other words, you had all the bells and whistles, if I can call it that, ready in play. Is that
yes, that's correct.
The processes and the commitment and the sincerity and devotion was in place. So when you have that in place and you've worked rigorously with those on yourself, when you get into partnership and then things arise, because they do, but being in relationship is actually one of the best ways to gain spiritual insight, because someone is going to reflect back to you what you're really doing if it's unconscious to you. And since we both had that commitment to work through things in a loving, positive, and supportive way, we just simply could be present with what was going on, and each person could take their responsibility for the part they're playing in it. And we kept doing that. It took us a year really of working up through that stuff, and then that was gone. Like once we worked through it, our relationship hasn't had any struggle or conflict in it since then. It was just this early stuff that we still had a little bit of our family programming that was left over from our individual journeys, that the partnership itself helped illuminate those patterns. And then because we were both focused on taking responsibility for ourselves, taking that empowerment and dismantling those programs, then when the relationship showed us those
Sorry.
programs were there,
Mm.
we were able to look at them, look at the pattern that was in place, and start to work on dismantling it.
We
So
did have that foundation before we got
sorry, yeah, go on.
together.
Yeah.
We already had each of us an unusual level of enthusiasm
Mhm.
about removing our own lack of clarity, and we knew that about each other very much. And so the ease and flow and frequency match, as you would say, was primed, and that allowed us to approach our individual work without taking it personally on each other, and with immense compassion and support for each other, so we could mutually inspire each other. There was a piece left over, and it did take about a year to work on, and it was at the start of our marriage. And we didn't feel alone working on it. We felt that we had guidance and support from the infinite love that exists, that is always there for all of us. And we took refuge in that in order to get through it. And that is the most deep way I've ever been able to transform myself. So we showed up, and we knew before we met that we would both show up. We had proven that to each other through talking about the journeys that we had both gone through. So it was already there before we got together. And yes, since that about a year of work, it has just been blissful.
Mm. Now, would this suggest that, I mean, for people listening and watching this podcast, that for the relationship to really blossom, and I'm probably not choosing the right words here, but you know what I'm saying. It's all about establishing our own self-love, self-responsibility, self-awareness.
Yes.
Up front, that's the foundation you're talking about, on which then a more fulfilling, again, words, right? But you know what I'm saying, a more, if you like, empowering and lasting relationship can develop. Or is that too simplistic?
No, that for us, that's very true. And that level of self-clarity and sincerity takes time to develop. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a choice and a commitment for all of us to develop that self-love. When we're born down here, unless we're fully enlightened, we forget that nature. And so for us, that's the purpose of life, is to remember that nature. And so we had a lot of acceptance of that journey, compassion for ourselves that allowed us to have compassion for each other and compassion for humanity and the people that we work with. And to reflect that and make the space comfortable. It's still really challenging to meet those parts and to go through that journey. It takes a lot of courage. And for us, you have to have a refuge in knowing there's a force of love that will support you always.
So you still have challenges, you still have things coming up which
we're not fully
attention.
enlightened. Yeah. We're
Right.
not fully enlightened, but
Okay.
interpersonally, we're not in a state of confusion with each other. The divine, we're still working with the divine one-on-one, each of us individually, growing and getting more clarity, more inner peace, more alignment with knowing our true selves.
Right.
And we've been doing that for a long time. So it has practical results and immense empowerments that show up if you stick to it. But we want people to know that it's choice, it's not the chosen. That this is available. This is the nature of life, just like a fruit grows on a tree. This is nature. The fruit will come if you align yourself with your purpose. So we have passion for that, and that's supported the work.
Yeah, it's basically as you raise your vibration, raise your frequency, you meet challenges. I think in some traditions they'll say gates, but you reach a certain gate, and that gate has a certain challenge that spiritually you have to overcome. Now, those challenges don't play out in our relationship. Our relationship is always mutually supportive, loving, and we have immense compassion and tenderness and kindness for each other. Yet if you spiritually are continuing to progress and raise your vibration, God, or the universe throws these challenges at you to see if you can pass the test, to prove that your vibration is solid and you're committed and you're not going to waver. And so as we've grown spiritually, it's not about our relationship anymore. It's just about us as individuals growing and meeting those challenges and continuing to progress in our own spiritual journey. It's just that there's no drama. I like how Don Miguel says it. He's like, if you choose love, then you drop the drama in your relationship because you're dropping the ego. The ego's there's less and less ego involved in the relationship. So that's in our relationship, there's no ego involved in it anymore, as far as power struggles and drama and arguments and all. That's all gone.
There's no codependency.
No codependency. But spiritually, we're still progressing and still meeting life's challenges, as that's just how the spiritual path works.
Yeah. You say that it's not about the relationship, but does the relationship not have a higher purpose or goal here? There's a lovely quote from someone recently I read. It's about, two people shining an even brighter light on the world, together when their own light is combined. So does that make sense? And I mean, how can you give me an example maybe of how that manifests? What most supports your well-being in the relationship? Maybe more than one thing.
The light most supports our well-being in the relationship, and we are immensely saturating ourselves in the light.
And when you say light, you mean your relationship with the divine, or do you want to define light for me? Yes. Okay,
I mean, even scientific yogic methods that some of our we've worked with some Satgurus doing Kriya Yoga method for 20 years. And we mean like tangible, a direct experience of the light. And I had memories of that light before I was incarnated. So the light has been an essential refuge that we take in order to gain that clarity.
Yeah.
And I want to say this with immense sensitivity. This was from your last question, and I hope that I do this well, and please forgive me. Because it refers to part of the question you asked prior, but there's a cultural message that I witnessed a lot before Grace and I met that I didn't agree with, that I heard everywhere. And I want to say that both men and women can point the finger at each other and say, like, women always do this, and that's why relationships don't work.
Yeah, and generalizations.
And they both do that to each other. A lot of my friends were saying, you're never going to find that evolved of a relationship. Men aren't like that.
Yeah.
There's no spiritual men that are evolved, basically, is what they're saying.
And I was like, I didn't try to say I don't agree with you. I just heard it and let it pass. But internally, I didn't have that belief. That wasn't my experience of men or women. Grace and I both have a lot of transcendent purpose in our karma and astrology. So we're very devoted to seeing what's hidden, what's in the shadow, and it's all over my astrological chart. And so I could see men and women suffering equally. We're human beings. We're not men and women who need to point the finger at each other. I wasn't in a cultural war with the other sex. And I don't want to be insensitive about what people's experiences have been, but that was key to my belief in order to overcome. I did inherit ancestral stories that were blocking me. And when I actually worked with two very well-known gurus that are known by millions of people, and they were coming to me in lucid dreams, helping me dismantle those ancestral stories the year before I met Grace. That's a longer story, not too long, and I could share it, but the divine absolutely shows up for you when you're sincere. we were very committed to healing those ancestral stories.
Mm.
We didn't want to carry those cultural stories that are shared, at least in the United States. Those are very common stories of the sexes battling each other.
Yeah.
And I would say even for my personal journey, and I have immense gratitude for the people in my life that were married, that at the time when I started my journey, I was looking and observing very closely their relationships. And I noticed they kept telling me a story about, I was reading on Miguel. So he had what I believe is the truth and was talking about spiritual truths, but the stories of the people around me, three couples in particular that I was really observing closely. One couple would say to me, "Oh, well, conflict is healthy for a relationship. It's good to argue and to be in the struggle and power struggles." And I would observe, their relationship and see, well, do I want to have a relationship that's full of struggle, conflict, and that I see that as a good thing. And I was reading Don Miguel, and he's saying that that's not a good thing. In fact, you want to walk away from that type of relationship. So I was very blessed. I was working with these people very closely and listening to their stories and judging it, discerning it against the truth of what I believe Don Miguel and the Buddhist teachings and the other teachings I was learning. And then one of the other couples told me, well, being married and being in a relationship is about commitment no matter what. Well, these people were committed and didn't get divorced, but they were also not in reality about certain addictions and certain things that were going on. One couple, there was an alcoholic. I was like, so they're loyal, and loyalty is good, but you can't be loyal to someone's addiction, or you can't be in denial of a certain reality. That's a loyalty, that's a dysfunctional loyalty. So I was like, well, I don't want to be loyal to anyone's dysfunctions. I'm loyal to the light and the divine within a person, but the person has to be choosing actively that that's the path they're on and healing themselves.
Mm.
So, and then the other, I had another couple, I was watching their relationship very closely as well. So by observing closely relationships and the stories people tell themselves, which is Don Miguel's teaching, is we're all telling stories, and you just focus on what your story is and don't worry about other people's stories. But observing other people's stories and them trying to convince me, oh, this is a good relationship if you have conflict or if you're loyal to things in the other person. And I said, well, I had all those things in me. And I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to create a different story based on the individual sovereignty of love and self-worth within their own spiritual being. And if someone doesn't have a complete confidence in their own self-worth as a spiritual being and a divine child of God and the light, then that's anything else other than that is a wounded story, and I'm not going to give any energy or attention to it. So when Persia showed up and she was committed to that path and doing that work and understood that her divine sovereign nature of love was what she was committed to, then I knew that was the right connection. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, very well expressed, if I may say so. I'd like to share a couple of quotes with you, and I would be grateful, very grateful for your comments. One of which we touched upon earlier. I think Persia touched upon it in relation to connecting with people that, let's say, we're not resonating with, but there is some dissonance between us. This comes from A Course in Miracles, and it says, you cannot enter into any real relationships with anyone until you love them all and equally. And I might add that one of my own mentors, Stuart Wilde, I remember him saying that you can't truly love until you've invited Hitler for tea. Which seems a bit extreme, but he had a thing about Hitler,
That's
but
a great
anyway,
quote.
it's great, isn't it? So, in fact, at one point I was considering writing a book called Loving Hitler, which was
I love it,
anyway,
Glenn.
yeah, I know, but
That's brilliant.
so what do you think?
Let me take a shot at it first.
Okay.
And this, I don't want to sound too cosmic and out there and woo-woo, but the the truth of every spiritual path we study is that we're all one.
Mm.
We're all one. So if you create an enemy image, and I like, Thich Nhat Hanh is so good at articulating this truth if you go and watch his videos. But because we are all one, we all have the responsibility to dismantle the enemy within and without.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're one. So if you carry an enemy image in your mind, and you have a being that is outside of you that you're going, they're the bad guy, and you're not seeing that the divine exists in them as well, then you're creating a distortion. And I'm not saying this is easy to do. This actually takes immense work to dismantle the enemy image and the distortion in yourself.
Yeah.
But this is kind of why I was saying, when someone is like Persia, and I met her and I saw that she was totally committed to the inner divine light and sovereignty within herself, that is when you know that there is a resonance happening. Now, you can see and have compassion and see the divine in all other beings. And that's very important teaching, because if you create an enemy and you create an image of something that's separate, then that's a distortion. So it's a very cosmic sort of thing, and it's hard to make it sound like bringing it into reality. But I know one of my teachers says that for his students, he recommends, if they do a meditation and an enemy, someone they're struggling with, keeps appearing in their meditation, to continually offer them flowers and to see the divine light in them until they dissolve. They dissolve and they stop coming into your meditation to disrupt you. Because I think that's a practice that's geared towards that universal truth, which is we're all one, and we all need to be in that vibration of complete acceptance and surrender to the oneness of all.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Let me go to the second quote, and maybe Persia can answer this one. I think this is right up your alley, Persia. It's from David Spangler. I don't know if you know David Spangler, an American guy. He actually spent a lot of time in the Findhorn Foundation, which is just around the corner from me. And he said, our true purpose is to find the divine within, the criterion for which is the practice and experience of unconditional love. I see you both nodding.
Yeah. There's stages on the journey, and we can't leap ahead to some of the advanced stages, but we can try really hard to at least, I used to think this was wrong. The gurus say, even if you haven't achieved it, try to fake it, because you're going to be much better off. There's a lot of steps you have to go through, and you should stay present to what's present in your life right now, today. That's step number one. Don't try to leap ahead. What's coming up? What are the patterns? And what can you do to call on and take refuge in that inner light that's within you, that is your true nature, that you're not aligned with? Get really, really honest and sincere. And if you don't have clarity about where you're not aligned, ask for clarity. Just commit, because sometimes the divine makes us work for it. But I do believe, from the experiences that I've had for quite a long time, each step of that journey brings us closer into that quote. And it deepens and strengthens and becomes more unmovable and more integrated. And there's more transcendence of all the stuff in the way with each of those steps. They're all sacred and important. You will know the divine light within you and your true nature and everyone's true nature. You have to know your own true nature first before you start experiencing other people that way. But once you do, you will see life and other people that way. And in terms of, loving Hitler, I love that quote, and I would love to write a book about that as well. I got really stuck on thinking about beings like him in the world. I think actually at the age of 6, I got stuck on that. I started seeing things going on in the world, and I was like, the beings here forgot that they're love. Yes. I was 6 years old. Beautiful. I remembered where I came from, and it was an infinite field of love and light. that was true to me. This down here wasn't true to me. And I was super having like an existential moment at 6 years old. How could they not know what their true nature is? I started finding out about the civil rights movement, and they literally showed us in the first grade a documentary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s civil rights activists getting beaten by the police. And I saw them as angels of the divine, those people, men and women who were black and white working together. And I started learning that war existed in the world. I started learning that we as a humanity were allowing people to starve. I was in shock that these things existed down here and that obviously the collective doesn't know that they're love. There is no one acting in any way that can do us any harm the more we align with understanding our true selves. And when there are beings out there doing that, the only reason they're doing that is because they've forgotten what they are. You can know that Hitler is born from the frequency of divine love and that he got really distant from it because he forgot. And one of the greatest practices I've ever done is when I've met people who are causing harm to others is to see them as children. Mm-hmm. And to remember that they're hurting children, that they had very difficult experiences that came into their lives that made them forget. You can't be removed from it, even if you've forgotten. It's still what we all are. Mm. I've had conversations with the Divine Mother that caused pain in my chest because she told me, I'm going to show you half of my love. And she took me into this lucid experience and vision where she showed me the entire existence of the cosmos. And I can't tell you, there's no way to describe how big it is. And what I realized what she was telling me was, I gave birth to everything and I am divine love. There's nothing that I've created that isn't divine love. They were telling me, like, stop obsessing about the beings out there who are doing these things. Drop it. They forgot what they are. They're still divine love. So that was profound, and it took a while to integrate. And I know that that's, for me at that time, that was a very advanced concept, but I kept committing. And you do start transcending these notions and these veils that tell us otherwise. If you show up, but you don't have to leap into that. Try your best to live by that, but just stay with where you're at today, because what's coming up right now in the step on your journey is vitally important. It's meant for you, and it will help you get through if you rely on asking and being sincere and asking for help.
Beautiful, thank you. You mentioned presence earlier, Persia. Is presence a prerequisite for an unconditionally loving relationship?
Yes, absolutely. And presence is, again, another thing that happens through stages and time and showing up each day. I had a lot to learn about presence, and it continues to unfold. And I think that's true for every single human being I've ever worked with. Presence is an alignment with self-love. Absolutely. So that love and that knowing of our true nature and that healing journey is what makes that deepen.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. I'd like to ask you about the ripple effect, what I call the ripple effect. So I'm going to say something now, let's call it hypothetical. Hypothetically, I see you guys in a beautiful energetic relationship that is creative in its energetic force, in its energetic blueprint. And I would see that relationship in that situation affecting what I call, you may have seen this from one of my previous podcasts, what we call harmonic induction. And harmonic induction is like the energy that we put out, whatever our whatever, whether it's love or something other than love, it goes out into the unified field and it affects the whole, right? To some extent, this is going back to what you were saying about oneness, Grace. But I would imagine that you guys have this effect. Now, do you know of any situation, any example you can give me where the example that you have portrayed, and if I can call it that, has actually had that effect materially on others?
Yeah, I'll talk
Many
about,
others.
I'll talk about something just recently
Recent.
we've experienced. We're in an area where um, Spirit has told us to go to certain spiritual communities
Faith
that are faith
communities.
communities in the area. So we've been going to these different churches and spiritual groups, and we've been invited to different fellowship circles and groups. And we'll get into the group and we'll sit down and people will be sharing. And a lot of the folks that we're with are in a very agitated and angry state about the affairs of the world. And they're in a deep despair about what's going on. And, that energy, you can see that energy is like going from person to person to person. And then it hits us. And then we start sharing about divine love and the inspiration of spirit and healing and forgiveness and the importance of positive thoughts.
And having peace inside yourself
Yeah.
every day.
And that how radical it is as a way of activism to be internally peaceful and tranquil and hold a certain energy and vibration. And so then that group energy will come, it'll hit us, we'll share this stuff, both of us will share it. And then the next person, they're lifted up and they start sharing about positive, loving things and that they maybe weren't considering all the aspects of their life and they maybe found something that they're grateful for. And that energy of despair and that energy of hostility and agitation will diminish just for the rest of that group. And not that there was a healing for anybody, but that just the energy that we hold inside of ourselves is very influential around the people, around anybody we're around. So that's why I say it's a radical act of activism to always be holding inner peace and tranquility and be emanating that divine unconditional love no matter where you go. Because even if you don't say anything at all, it influences the people that are around you.
And I would say in terms of some of those faith group meetings that we've had and we've witnessed this, our will is very strong because we don't compromise when it comes to staying close to the divine love. And we knew that everyone in the room that was talking about their despair about the world, it couldn't disrupt our field because we knew that they were all divine love. We knew that they were hurting because they're grieving for the world and that they don't know how to navigate it. I think it's important to have grief because that's love, but despair removes us from our power. And I think that if we stay in our peace and have grief and have total faith and refuge that the truth will come out, which is the love that we all are, then the divine goes, this is the best form of activism that exists. Your commitment to knowing and taking refuge in what's true allows me and gives me free will, because you've given your free will to help humanity on your behalf because you've chosen not to compromise that. We should never give up that knowing of love and peace inside of us. When we do, we become ineffective. So we didn't want to convince anyone of anything, but we knew that we could love them exactly where they were. We knew they were coming from love. We saw love within them. And so when we shared, we weren't trying to convince anyone of anything. We were staying with the truth that we understood from our direct experience. We shared very lovingly and quite extensively. And everyone that came up to us for months now, after we go to these meetings, says, you've changed the tone of all of our meetings.
Beautiful.
They've asked us to start to lead services because once a month there's a guest speaker and we're very excited to speak about the divine and our relationship to the divine, and we give 100% credit to the divine, not to anything special about us, but it's our commitment and choice, and that's available to all of us to flow with our true nature and purpose. And so, yes, we're constantly on a daily, with every human we work with one-on-one, with every class we teach, and with the local community, which may or may not be interested in this deeper out there stuff that we talk about. We're gentle and humble enough.
So there is a ripple effect.
There's a ripple effect if you're not trying to convince anyone of anything, and you truly see them as the divine. And you've removed your judgments. If you're carrying judgments and opinions to try to convince, it shuts it right down. You can't flow.
Right.
Yeah.
We've come to the hour mark almost, but I'd like to maybe, I don't know, maybe it's sort of taking it down a one notch or two. Maybe it isn't. This is just me pontificating here. But for people watching and listening, I mean, this has been a fantastic interview, you guys. What would you say are the key attributes or behaviors to manifest for the strongest, healthiest, and most loving relationship? Maybe for people there who are either both in a relationship and not in a relationship, but would like to be.
I think it starts with faith, absolute faith in knowing that the divine light is your true nature. What you are made of. And even if you don't feel it, in the beginning when I was learning this stuff, I told the divine, I don't feel this. I don't actually feel that love of my true nature, but I'm willing to learn. I can't, no one, like my family didn't love me. So I need to be shown by the divine what my true nature is. So never giving up and having faith that even if you don't feel it, the starting point is to express your longing to God, to the divine, that I don't feel my true nature, but I'm committed and I have faith that I know that that's real. And then you start that journey. So never compromising, having true faith and devotion in your nature, even if you don't feel it, but you are just calling out to the divine. I want to feel the truth. And so that's I would say the first step. And then after that, it becomes a matter of, following certain spiritual practices in a devoted and sincere way, always being willing to look at yourself, always being willing to reflect on interactions that you're having in the world, and is there something I need to learn from that?
Being curious.
Being curious and asking good questions. That's something that's critically important. And as a spiritual being, we should always be questioning and asking, what is the divine showing me through these experiences about myself and about my true nature, and maybe what's in the way of my true nature that I need to drop? Because we incarnated here where we are layered with all these distortions and complexes and identities, and our job to realize our true nature is to drop all that stuff. So every experience that we're having is giving us insight into those identities that need to be dropped. And so it's a step-by-step process, but it's also having complete faith and not compromising, that that that's where you're going, and to never give up.
Yeah, I think that sincerity, which deepens over time as clarity comes, and like Grace said, taking refuge in the light and knowing that lives within you and is always there for you. And I would say also, those two pieces are definitely the key foundation, the core. I would also say it takes time to learn how to be the witness. So a meditation practice is very important, to know how to calm the mind, to become still enough to listen and receptive enough to listen. That meditation will rewire your brain to learn how to be the sacred witness. If you're really disturbed by all the shadow stuff, you're going to be caught and gripped by it. So there's steps and tools, and being a witness is one of them. And that strengthens over time as you invest and keep showing up. So I would say a meditation practice will really help people deepen their connection to that inner light, deepen their sincerity, deepen the intuitive guidance, and deepen the clarity to see properly and peacefully and be present, like we've been talking about. You have to be a witness to what's going on. You have to have some inner stillness. You have to slow down a bit.
Wow, thank you guys. This has been such an insightful conversation. I'd like to ask you to maybe in a couple of shortish sentences, they don't have to be that short, but fairly short. What message would you like to give to the audience? Maybe something that you've said already, maybe something you haven't, and something that maybe connects our individuality with what we all know to be the bigger picture. In other words, the microcosm of the macrocosm, and how we can all then, as we are indeed already, but I'd like to hear you articulate it, play our part in, bringing love and peace to the world.
It's a big question.
We need an hour to answer.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast.
Would you like to answer it in the next podcast? Okay.
Yeah,
I think that we've touched upon those things a lot today, but I would say that our direct experience is what matters. And that's not our concepts and opinions. It's different. Our direct experience, when we apply these scientific tools, like one of the biggest messages we want people to know is that there's nothing special about us. We're trying to inspire people to understand that these scientific methods are available to anyone. The light and love is what we are made up of. We've learned that through direct experience. Anyone can have those direct experiences. Again, I don't want people to believe there are a chosen few that are superior. What I want the message to really be is that every single one of you, every single one of us, this divine light lives inside of us. It will always support us and guide us. It will always help us develop a closer relationship. Its intent and single purpose is for you to know your true self. And when you show up on your end and ask the right questions and are really sincere and say, I see this blocking me and I don't know how to remove it, and I'm asking for help, and I'm going to be 100% honest. If it's not 100% transcended and gone, if I've got 97% healed and there's still 3% there, I'm going to ask the divine, how can I align myself with the truth of this love? And whether that's boundaries or compassion or whatever it is you're trying to learn, when you know it's not present, show it and take refuge to the light. It will help you. It will help 100% of you because it's been waiting for you to ask it for help. It's been waiting for you to be sincere and give your free will for it to help you. It is what you truly are. It is what we all truly are. And its single purpose for us is for every single one of us to experience directly that love. It will never turn away from you if you show up. That's what you are, and you always will get help.
I was going to say something similar.
Yes, just to add something, Grace.
Help is always there. It just starts with an unwavering commitment and devotion to your inner truth, and that you're willing to listen.
And your inner truth as love.
And you're willing to ask the right questions. And then you sit back and listen, and the divine light will answer and provide the right help for you to move forward. Because, if you're incarnated human in a human body, your spirit is on this growth path. And that's what we're all here to experience on planet Earth is a spiritual growth journey. So wherever you're at, just start where you're at. Ask the right questions with complete faith and devotion and commitment that you are going to get the help, that the divine light wants to guide you to your next spiritual evolutionary step, and that's what you're here to do.
And be gentle with yourself, like you're holding a baby in your arms. No matter what you're going through, treat it as if you're holding a newborn baby with so much love and compassion. Be always, always gentle with yourself.
Oh, that's great to conclude our session today. Thank you both so much. Thank you,
Thank
Grace.
Thank you,
Glenn.
Grace.
Thank you, Persia. It's been delightful. And I hope that this has been and will be of help, something of a key word in the last few minutes, to all of you listening and watching. And you'll be pleased, hopefully, to hear that I intend to invite Persia and Garland back for a continuation of this. There's so much more I could have asked them, and I'm sure that you guys listening are thinking, oh, what about this? What about that?
We'll do it again.
That's great. We'll do it again.
Yeah.
Until then, thanks very much for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks
And
again, Persia.
Thanks for your beautiful
and-
heart,
And
Glenn.
bless you, Glenn, and bless all your audience and viewers. And may
The
this,
exquisite work that you're
yeah,
doing.
may this
Thank
be a
This,
thing.
this was a blessing for us, and we hope it was for everyone. Thank you all.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Glenn.
Certainly for me. Thank you both very much indeed. And lots of love. Go well, as always.
Lots of love.
Bye-bye.